So we have some interesting news about Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis and his future with the company. Now, of course, Don Callis is all involved in this Kenny Omega, Impact Wrestling, AEW World Championship, AEW relationship drama at the moment and storyline, and it's got everyone buzzing and talking about it. We've been speaking about it extensively here on the channel, but it would appear that Don Callis might not be around in Impact Wrestling much longer, because it is being reported by Wrestling Inc. that they have heard that Don Callis' contract with Impact Wrestling may be coming up next month, and once Don Callis is done with Impact, he will transition into moving over to AEW full-time to work as Kenny Omega's on-screen manager and an on-screen talent. To me, when I heard this news, to be honest, it was quite shocking. I really didn't expect this from Don Callis in Impact Wrestling. We did a video last month and it actually blew up a little bit over the last few days because we kind of predicted this working relationship between AEW and Impact. We spoke about Don Callis possibly moving over to AEW, working as a manager for Kenny Omega, having a talent trade, all that kind of stuff. We spoke about that. And at the time, my thought process was, when it came to Don Callis working as a manager for Kenny Omega, my feeling was I didn't think he would leave Impact. I could see him becoming a talent and a manager for Kenny Omega going forward because it's a big opportunity. It's a role that maybe doesn't require a ton of amount of time from the perspective of Don Callis. But I felt that when push came to shove, he would stay in his role with Impact Wrestling. Why did I think that at the time? Well, it's a senior job. It's a senior job in a major pro wrestling company. Now, of course, Impact Wrestling isn't WWE. Impact Wrestling isn't AEW in terms of the size and stature and footing in the pro wrestling business right now. Nevertheless, it's a senior job as an executive vice president in a promotion that is doing quite well, having a lot of success over the last 12 months especially, and has got a lot of momentum. And quite frankly, he's invested a lot of time and effort from his personal life and professional life into Impact Wrestling. It was, of course, announced on December 5th, 2017, that he, along with Scott D'Amore, would be executive vice presidents going forward in Impact Wrestling. This was after the fallout of Jeff Jarrett and GFW and all that kind of stuff with Anthem. And during these 3 years, and it's pretty much been 3 years, to the day that was announced, he has done a hell of a lot when it comes to Impact Wrestling along with Scott D'Amore. And they've done fantastic things with Impact Wrestling. You have to look at Impact Wrestling's progression over the last 3 years. This was a brand that was damaged and was dying. It was a dead brand. A lot of people wouldn't have touched Impact Wrestling, and they lost a lot of fans, and a lot of fans became disenfranchised with the promotion, with the brand, because we had seen the rise and fall. It felt like we were coming to the end of the life cycle when it comes to Impact Wrestling. We'd seen the rise from the weekly pay-per-views, from the Fox Sports days onto Spike TV and all that kind of stuff. We have seen all the different regimes of the Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Jarretts to the Dixie Carters being involved, Vince Russo writing TV, Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, Bruce Pritchard, Billy Corgan, Dixie Carter, Jeff Jarrett coming back in. It felt like this was a brand that was done, and it felt like it was a brand that could truly never recover. It had its heyday in the mid-2000s on Spike TV. They had an opportunity to compete. For whatever reason, the Game of Thrones element to it, Dixie Carter and the Carters sticking their heads in the sand, the ostrich, all that kind of stuff. It felt like it was just a company that had its time, but it was never going to come back to the level that it once was. Now, right now, is Impact Wrestling where it was in the mid-2000s? Of course it's not, and it might not ever make it back. Back in the mid-2000s, Impact, TNA at the time, was on Spike TV. It was viewed by 1.5 to 2 million viewers every single week, live, more on DVR. I mean, AEW would be over the moon with that kind of rating today. Monday Night Raw would be happy for 2 million viewers right now. SmackDown just does over 2 million viewers, so that kind of shows how many people were watching TNA Impact back in the day. Nevertheless, it felt like it was done. It felt like the life cycle was over. Nevertheless, Don Callis, along with Scott D'Amore and Anthem and everyone there behind the scenes with Impact, has helped bring it back to life. It has helped have this progression with Impact. It was a damaged brand, and they have been and still are on the road to recovery. They're on Access TV now, which is owned by Anthem as well. They've done big signings over the course of the last 12 months. You've got the Good Brothers, Eric Young's return, Heath is now in Impact Wrestling. You had EC3 return briefly. There have been rumours about Kurt Angle coming back. They're trying to sign Chael Sonnen, and they've got this relationship now with AEW. You've got Kenny Omega appearing on Access TV on Tuesday. Impact feels like it's got this momentum. When they had Slammiversary over the summer, it was trending worldwide. When's the last time an Impact Wrestling pay-per-view did that? Probably back when you had Impact on Spike TV. They were trending #1 in the United States. When's the last time they did that? The product, if you're a fan of Impact over the course of the last 3 years, you know the product in Impact has been fantastic for almost 3 years at this point. So he has done, along with Scott D'Amore and everyone behind the scenes, fantastic things, and it seems surprising that he would, now that his contract is expiring, that he would drop that right now. And you do have to consider, and this is a real difficult question to answer, is a talent role in AEW, just as a pure on-screen talent, not being involved behind the scenes creatively or anything like that, is that a step down from being a senior figure, an executive vice president in a company like Impact Wrestling? And to me, it's a really difficult one. It is a difficult one. It depends what your motivations are, and it depends what you want to contribute. Is the money going to be better with AEW? I would probably suspect so. Obviously, everything isn't about money. Life isn't always about money. You do have to weigh up money and being creatively fulfilled and being in a position of power. It's a really difficult one, and I'm surprised, like I said, that he isn't sticking around in Impact and he hasn't made a deal where both can work. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. And don't get me wrong, being the manager of the world champion in one of the biggest promotions in the world, AEW, being the manager of one of the biggest and best wrestlers in the world in Kenny Omega, one of the biggest stars, it's a difficult deal to turn down. It's a huge deal. But I don't know. I think that would, if I was in Don Callis' position, which I'm not, if I was in Don Callis' position, it would be a difficult decision for me to make. It really would. In Impact, in terms of being a talent, have we seen a lot of Don Callis? Well, we've seen him be a colour commentator. He was regularly a colour commentator for a while in Impact, which I'm still sticking by my opinion. I think he's the best colour commentator in the world right now. I know that upsets some people because, it's not true. I think he's fantastic. I loved his work in New Japan. I loved his work in Impact. As a colour commentator, he's fantastic. He really is the best at that. As much as a talent, though, we haven't seen him a ton as a talent. I guess you would call that being a talent, I guess, in Impact. But his work behind the scenes has been far more important than his work behind the mic in the commentary booth. But you have to look at it from an AEW perspective. Does Kenny Omega need a manager? Of course, Kenny Omega doesn't need anything. He's Kenny Omega. He's one of the biggest stars in the world. He's one of the best wrestlers in the world. He's one of the biggest stars that AEW has on the roster right now. He's the world champion. Does Kenny Omega need a manager? No. I look at it as the same way with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman in WWE. Does Roman Reigns need a manager? No, he doesn't. Does Kenny Omega need a manager? No, he doesn't. It's just about the whole package. Having Kenny Omega with Don Callis makes the whole package better. It makes the TV better. It makes the creative better. It just makes everything better. It makes the segment better. It makes, again, the character of Kenny Omega better. Does Kenny Omega need a mouthpiece? No. I think we've forgotten, as a fan base with pro wrestling, what managers truly are when it comes to pro wrestling. Managers aren't always mouthpieces. They're not. If you go back to the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s, managers are kind of a lost art. They're a dying breed right now. Managers back then, they weren't always mouthpieces. In some cases, maybe most cases they were. But they weren't always, because you don't always need to have a mouthpiece. Just having the manager in your corner adds you credibility. Now, does Don Callis add Kenny Omega credibility? No, Kenny Omega doesn't need credibility. It's about the overall picture. It's about the overall character and the overall gimmick. Don Callis adds to that. So I am not opposed in the slightest to having Don Callis as the manager of Kenny Omega. I think, if anything, it's a fantastic addition. It's real. It reflects real life. Don Callis and Kenny Omega are very close. Don Callis has been a mentor figure to Kenny Omega. They're both from Winnipeg in Canada. And Don Callis, in some cases, has kind of been a manager for Kenny Omega. He helped facilitate things like the Chris Jericho-Kenny Omega match in New Japan. He kind of has been a manager in real life. We know he's a senior figure in Impact, and he's a senior figure in the pro wrestling business because of that. So him being a real-life manager and handling the business affairs of Kenny Omega, it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense from that point of view, and it's a huge get when it comes to AEW. Nevertheless, Don Callis leaving Impact is a massive blow for the company. I mean, he's been a hugely important figure to everything they've done over the last 3 years. He's the reason. You have to remember, he's the reason right now that this crossover between AEW and Impact is happening. That's Don Callis. If Don Callis isn't in Impact Wrestling right now, this crossover doesn't happen. Don Callis is the reason we had Chris Jericho Wrestle Kingdom for New Japan. Don Callis is the reason we've got Kenny Omega coming into Impact Wrestling on Tuesday. Don Callis has been vital for all of that. And it doesn't happen without Don Callis. It really doesn't. This crossover between AEW and Impact doesn't happen if you don't have Don Callis as an executive vice president for Impact Wrestling. And he's been very close to bringing in big names because of his relationships in the industry. He came very close to making Kenny Omega come into Impact before. I know people scoff at that, but it's true. He came very close to getting in Chris Jericho to make some appearances for Impact Wrestling. And I know the response to that will be, well, very close isn't actually appearing. That is very true. Nevertheless, Don Callis has been a crucial figure when it comes to Impact Wrestling, and his influence on the product has been vital as well to the recent success, along with everyone else. It's not just Don Callis' show, it's a whole team effort, as it were. It's Don Callis, Scott D'Amore, Ed Nordholm, Anthem, the whole roster, etc. Nevertheless, Don Callis has been a vital cog in that wheel. So I think he's had links with New Japan. We've seen them show up in Impact. Tajiri Ishimori, hasn't been in Impact previously due to his GFW links with Noah, but he came back. I think Don Callis had an important fact in that. Now, regardless of Don Callis' departure, Impact will go on. They will survive. The question will be, I guess, will they get another executive vice president to do duties with Scott D'Amore? Will Scott D'Amore just take over the role as a singular executive vice president in Impact Wrestling? We'll have to wait and see. I think that probably depends on the workload and the pay, I guess. I don't think Scott D'Amore would want to take up Don Callis' responsibilities and still get paid his current wage. I mean, if it was me and I'm getting more work, I would want more pay for that. Maybe they do bring in another executive vice president. Maybe it's just Scott D'Amore. That whole corporate side of things, that corporate structure, we'll have to wait and see. They both, in their roles as executive vice presidents, at the time that they were announced, Scott D'Amore and Don Callis, I think a lot of people were surprised. Chris Jericho mentioned it on his podcast at the time. These were people that hadn't really been given a fair shot, as it were, in a big company. Scott D'Amore was involved with Impact for a while with Jeff Jarrett, but he wasn't in that real senior role as an executive vice president. And people were kind of curious to see what Don Callis and Scott D'Amore would do going forward in Impact. 3 years later, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. They've done a fantastic job. They really have done a fantastic job. Impact has progressed a lot. It was a very tough job as well, considering the reputation of the company, the reputation of the brand. As I said, it was a dead brand. They've got a lot of momentum at the moment, and if Don Callis does indeed leave Impact to become a full-time talent for AEW, it's a huge loss. As I mentioned, it's surprising. It's very surprising. I thought if he did become a talent for AEW, which I kind of did see, the writing was on the wall. Once Don Callis starts appearing at AEW pay-per-views like Full Gear and starts getting involved with Kenny Omega, and you see on Twitter Don Callis leaving with Kenny Omega from Daily's Place, the writing was on the wall, the hints were there, the breadcrumbs were there, as it were, about there was definitely going to be some form of relationship with Don Callis and Kenny Omega on AEW TV going forward. Obviously, that's a managerial role. That's what I kind of thought. Nevertheless, I did think it would be a balancing act. I really did feel that he wouldn't leave Impact. It's too senior a role for him to leave. He's so important to the company. I didn't think he would leave. I mean, you look at the AEW taping schedule. It's once a week, so 4 times a month. And you're just a talent, you're not getting involved in the chaos backstage. I felt that he possibly could balance that with an EVP role in Impact Wrestling, but it looks like he's giving that up to just become a talent with AEW, which, again, it's surprising. It's surprising. Those positions of power in companies like Impact Wrestling and just those positions of power in pro wrestling in general, they're hard to come by, and Impact really does feel like it's on the cusp of going to another level and going to a next step. They've been growing nicely, they've been progressing nicely over the course of the last few years, and it does feel that it probably isn't the right time to jump off that ship once you've put in all that hard work to steady it in the first place. That would be my initial reaction to it, but look, I guess the opportunity to manage the world champion in a company like AEW, to manage Kenny Omega, to manage one of your best friends, I guess that doesn't come along that often. I'm sure he's had discussions with Kenny Omega, with Kenny saying, I really want you to do this. And like I said, I'm sure the finances are good as well. So obviously it's a huge spot, and maybe Don Callis just feels like, it's a position I just can't turn down. So it's a surprising bit of news, but we'll have to wait and see whether it actually happens nevertheless. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. Let me know your thoughts on Don Callis potentially leaving Impact Wrestling and becoming a full-time talent with AEW to manage Kenny Omega. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about Impact, AEW, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to leave a comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really just helps out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.